Hi guys, Jared here. Today we're going to be talking about the Neo Geo. Or more precisely, we're going to be talking about how you get involved in collecting for the Neo Geo. I'm going to go through all the different hardware options, software options, and what have you. If you're looking for a video that details the history behind the Neo Geo, I recommend you click the link and it will take you to a video I did about a year ago that talks all about the different history behind this wonderful platform. But for today, we're going to be looking sort of like at a guide that will walk you through collecting for the Neo Geo. So, here are your options available. The first option is the MVS, or the Multi-Video System. And this bad boy, which was released in 1990, I believe, it basically was an arcade cabinet that had multiple cartridge slots inside. It was an easier way for arcade owners to just go in and instead of buying a whole new box, they could just swap the different cartridges. There were single slots, there were 2, 4, and 6. So as you can imagine, that's pretty impressive, right? You could allow your customers to come in, play on this unit, and just tab like what game they want to play. So if you're looking to collect for the Neo Geo, this is a perfectly good option. It has the largest library of Neo Geo titles in the world. There's a lot of exclusives that were only ever made for the MVS that were never brought over to the home platforms. What else? I've got a whole list here because there's so much stuff. It's also the cheapest way of buying games. Well, you'll see what I mean by that in just a little bit. But the reason for this is that arcades were tremendously popular in North America and all over the world. I mean, they're still popular in Japan. And so a lot of these carts that were made for the MVS are out there. And because there's so many that are out there, even though the demand is high, because the supply is high, it sort of balances out the price. And you'll see that is the core main problem with the home version, the AES, or the Advanced Entertainment System. But let's not jump the gun. So what's the con with the MVS? Well, the major con with the MVS is it's an arcade. So you're buying an arcade cabinet. And I don't know about you, but you might not have the necessary space. It's not easy to get to your house. So, for example, like for me, there's been a few that I've been interested in purchasing over the years, but they've all been down in the States. And because of that, I have to ship them to Canada. Think of that. Now, if I can rent a U-Haul, drive down there, pick this monster up, and bring it back home, that's fine, no problem. But that's not always an option. And that might not be an option for you. And I mean, your house might not be big enough to actually house this monstrous cabinet. So your next option is the AES, or the Advanced Entertainment System. Now this is the home console of the MVS. It's the exact same thing. I mean, this was revolutionary back in 1991 when this platform was released, because it offered gamers the ability to literally bring the arcade experience into the home. That had never been done before, and it's the first console that allowed for true one-to-one visual and audio clarity from the arcade into the home. Now, don't be confused here. The MVS carts and the AES carts are different beasts entirely. You cannot take one or the other and just swap them in the machine. It does not work like that. It requires converters and a whole bunch of other stuff, and usually it doesn't work that simple. It doesn't work well at all, to be honest with you, depending on what you buy and how much you're going to spend. Just so you know, those converters can cost up $250. So it's not usually worth it, in my opinion, but whatever. Okay. The Advanced Entertainment System typically retails for about $200 and up, depending on what's been done to the machine, which we'll get to in a minute, and also the condition. You got to think that these consoles are like 20 years old, or more than 20 years old now. So, yeah, you know, like there might be scratches on it. And the AES, as you can see, came with joysticks. I mean, and joysticks, you got to think, you're pounding down on these buttons and you're moving that joystick like crazy, especially if you've got a girlfriend or a wife or whatever who's like a button masher. So, as you can imagine, like these things, they've taken a beating over the year, and so obviously, the price is going to fluctuate really a lot. What's the pro for this is the most convenient way of playing Neo Geo games. I mean, it's got everything necessary. It is a console, right? Just plug it into your TV and away you go. Obviously, HD TVs didn't exist back then, so you are limited to how you can connect it. In North American models, it's actually a good question. I don't even remember anymore. I believe all you had was your standard composite, but I might be mistaken. I know in Europe you had SCART and stuff like that, but here in North America that wasn't an option. So if you're going to just buy an AES, especially if you buy a North American or a Japanese model that hasn't been modified in any way, shape, or form, you're probably going to need a CRT in order to actually experience the game as it was meant to be played, because with HD TVs, they upscale the image, and that can cause all kinds of weird like graphical effects and things like that. But anyways, the bottom line is the Pro. This is a platform that is just very easy to get into. They're pretty common to find on eBay and places like that. I mean, it's not ultra rare. It's ultra rare to find one at a good price. The biggest con is the price, but not of the system, of the games. You see, this platform was never super popular when it came out. I wonder why. It retailed for like over 500 bucks. So, you know, not many people could afford it. So because the system was so expensive, not many games were made. And because not many games were made, well, you can imagine, the supply is extremely low. And this is actually really relevant as you move on in the console's life. At first, the early titles, it's not so bad. They can be found for pretty good prices, but as you move closer to 2004, which is when the last official release was released, it's insane how high these games go. I mean, it's not uncommon to see titles like Garo Mark of the Wolves go for 750 bucks, for example, on the AES for a mint quality game. And that's only one game. That's right. And even back in the day when this platform was originally released, games retailed for about 200 bucks. Well, they were at least over 100. It depended on the title. So this was basically niche to begin with. And actually, it was never intended to be released to the masses. This was mainly going to be a platform where you would go to a hotel and you would be able to rent it, things like that. But what SNK found was that there were people who had rented the console and were like, you know what, I love this, I want to buy this. Well, yeah, no kidding. Who wouldn't want to buy it? So they weren't stupid. They released this in very limited quantities to make sure that they didn't bleed out all kinds of money. But fast forward to today, where this is the arcade platform of choice for anyone growing up in the 90s, especially in the early 90s. I mean, SNK was a force to be reckoned with. These guys put out some incredible games, especially fighters, which obviously, if you found this video, odds are you know about SNK's fighters. So, games are extremely expensive. That's the biggest downfall with the AES, okay? Now, I had mentioned before that, you know, depending on what was been done to your console, now would be a very good time to talk about that. You see, some companies and some people had a real love for the Neo Geo brand, especially with the AES. They loved it. And so what they've done is they've actually gone inside, opened up the machine, and tinkered with the motherboard a bit in order to make the system more, how can I say this, future-proof, if you will. They've gone in and they've actually adjusted the video out. So now not only would you have, say, composite, but you'll actually have component, you can have S-video, you can have all the different options you want. Some have even gone in with the power supply, and they've made it a universal power supply. So you don't have to worry about where you are in the world. You can take this, go to Europe, fly it in, like to Japan, come back to North America, whatever you want. And as long as you have the adapter for the prong, you don't have to worry about blowing the system up. And that's amazing. And then, of course, comes the BIOS. Now this is something you gotta listen up and hopefully you understand this. So basically the BIOS is what controls sort of like the region encoding, if you will. With the MVS and with the AES, I'm not 100% sure if the arcade cabinets work just like the AES. I have lots of experience with the AES. I have virtually no experience with the MVS. So I'm going to focus in on the AES, and some of you Neo Geo fans out there can chime in and let me know if it's exactly the same with the MVS, but I'm pretty sure it is. Okay, so here's what would happen. You buy a Japanese game for your AES. Why? Because they're cheaper. Why are they cheaper? They made more of them over there. So you buy your game, you plunk it into your home console, the AES, and you go like this. That's weird. Why? Because the game is in English. Not only is the game in English, but there's no blood, and some of the other mature themed elements have been removed. One of the most like the most popular one was basically with breast physics. That's right, even back then. The North American version would typically, you wouldn't see any bouncing or jiggling or anything like that, whereas you would in the Japanese one. Same deal with the blood. In the North American version you wouldn't have blood, and in the Japanese version you would. So what these fans have done, have actually gone in, changed the BIOS completely to allow you the freedom to select what language you want to play, the maturity level of the game, whether or not you want to turn these options on or off, especially with blood and what have you. But I mean, imagine, you can't play Metal Slug without blood. That's like blasphemous. But they've gone one step further. They've added cheat codes, they've added all kinds of stuff, all built in right into the BIOS. And I gotta say, it's amazing. It really is. It's absolutely amazing. And it also allows you to really enjoy all those Japanese games on your North American console or whatever. It suddenly doesn't matter. You can buy a Japanese console, as long as it has the UniBIOS inside, it doesn't matter anymore, because you can just manually switch the language, switch all these other options. So that's what I was referring to when I talked about the AES and the MVS, what had been done to it. With the AES, if you have a console that has been heavily modified like this, like we're talking Omega modified, they even put LED lights in the power button on the console, all kinds of crazy stuff. Doing this adds a lot to the price. I mean a lot. It's not uncommon to see these go for about $650 to $700 on eBay. And why is that? Well, number one, the machine itself isn't exactly flying off store shelves, right? I mean, it's rare. It's rare to begin with. Secondly, you've got all this additional programming and everything else that's been done to it. There's soldering, there's rewiring, there's all this jazz that someone had to do. And they had to do a good job because, you know, they want to make money off this, right? So it adds a lot to the cost, unfortunately. Now, the MVS I'm going to touch on in a little bit, because there's something else that can be done with an MVS. It's pretty awesome, but we'll deal with that in a sec. Let's keep moving on with the official hardware. So the next hardware, after the MVS and the AES, is the Neo Geo CD. Now, this thing can be had for about $150, give or take, again, depending on condition and things like that. The pros with this particular platform are cheapest games available, bar none. Nothing compares to these games. They're dirt cheap. You can find some for like $5. You're very doubtful you're ever going to find any MVS carts, or especially AES carts, for that low, unless you are extremely lucky or you buy some bundle or something like that. It also has a very large library, which is great, right? I mean, what's wrong with that? Unfortunately, it has some pretty big cons. One of which is SNK stopped making CDs long before they stopped making MVS carts and AES carts. So as such, while it has a large library, it doesn't quite compare to the AES or the MVS, unfortunately. But that's not the bad part. The bad part is that it has ridiculous load times. And for the longest time, this was the only platform that people could sort of jump on in an affordable way in order to experience Neo Geo games from the actual company, from SNK themselves. But for guys like me, it was never an option. It's just, I can't stand sitting there waiting and waiting. And you got friends over, everybody wants to, you know, have a couple of rounds of King of Fighters or whatever, or Art of Fighting or Fatal Fury or Samurai Showdown, The Last Blade. I could go on forever here. And people just, it's boring, you know? You're all sitting on your sofa, you got your arcade sticks, yeah, let's go. Because that's something I did mention. The AES and the CD, they can share controllers, which is wicked. I mean, the Neo Geo CD actually came with a really nice controller that you're able to just, you know, use on your AES. How awesome is that? Although if you're a purist, you're going to want the arcade stick, so that's the end of that. But anyways, these long load times are ultimately what destroyed the Neo Geo CD. Not only that, but because it was an early CD system, it's prone to overheating, and also for the actual laser diode to not work anymore. So if you are looking to purchase one of these, make damn sure it still works. That's very important. Next up is the CDZ or CDZ, depending on where you are in the world. This bad boy retails for about $250 and up, based on condition, what it comes with, blah, blah, blah. The pros is discs tend to load quite a bit faster. Is it night and day? Depends on the game. Some games I found personally load almost exactly like they did on the Neo Geo CD, whereas others I've experienced have been about twice as fast. So again, that's up to you. Cons? It's expensive. It really is. And considering they're CDs, considering they're still loading and this and that and everything else, yeah. Why is it so expensive? Because it was only released in Japan. So it's an import. And they've got you by the cojones, as they say. Like, these guys can charge whatever they want, and if you're looking for an affordable way of getting into Neo Geo, that's actually the best way of doing it. Another problem, though. Hardware. It's still an early CD system. As such, you still have to be careful that the actual diode isn't burnt out or anything like that. In other words, you got to make sure it works. So, one more platform that was actually just released last year, I believe it was, or early this year, was the Neo Geo X. Now, if you're interested in Neo Geo and you've been thinking about jumping in, this was supposed to be the dream come true. Why? Because it was a platform. It was a portable, right? So you could take these Neo Geo games with you anywhere you wanted. It came with a docking station that you could use to charge your portable. But not only that, it actually came with a Neo Geo arcade stick. How awesome is that? And it plugged into your TV. It was like, wow, this is a dream come true. And it retailed for what? I think it was like $200 or so for all of that. And today, right now, you can go on Amazon and pick one up for like 120, 150 bucks. Amazing, right? It comes with 21 games. These are real, authentic SNK games. I mean, awesome. They also released a cart for, I think it's like 75 bucks, like a deluxe cart or something like that. That has like 15 games on it. Oh my God, 15 games. Could you imagine? Think of that if that was on AES or on the MVS. We're talking thousands of dollars here that you're getting for next to nothing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Or is it? You see, those are all the pros. Everything I just mentioned with that is, it's awesome. I mean, for the price, let's say it costs you, for an extra joystick and the games, let's say it costs like 300 bucks or 350 bucks. Think of what you're getting. You're getting all this stuff with it. I mean, that's like, wow, it was amazing. I was so excited. You have no idea. And then the reviews started coming out. Now, I don't own one. I plan to pick one up just for the channel, just so I can review it and actually show you guys compared to an actual AES/MVS, how it compares. But from what I've heard, the build quality is rather poor on some elements of the platform, but that's not my main issue. My main issue is that it runs a Linux emulator of all those classic Neo Geo games. That sucks. And apparently the emulator on the PSP is actually a better quality than the emulator on the Neo Geo X. Now, while SNK designed this, like they did the blueprints for it, if you will, and the schematics and all that, it was a company called Tomo that actually made the platform itself. So The verdict is out on this one, whether this is the dream console or not. I've seen direct feed gameplay from both an AES and from the Neo Geo X, and there was absolutely no comparison. Like, the X had bleeding, there was artifacting, there was vertical sync issues, but I've also seen videos out there that don't have those like issues. Now I know there was a firmware update that was just released. I don't know if that fixed these problems or whatever. Like I say, I don't own it, so I don't want to speak too badly about it. But at the same time, of all the different platforms I've spoken about, this is the only one that I don't have any time with, right? The rest I have a lot of experience with, so that's about all I can say about the Neo Geo X. I really do. I really hope it's the dream come true for those looking to check out Neo Geo, but I'm just not sure anymore because of all the negative stuff I've heard. But we'll see. Okay, there's one other big way that's it's become quite popular over the last couple of years, and that is the MVS, or the Consolized MVS. Now, the way this works is extremely interesting. The way this works is as such. These guys, and these guys I'm talking are basically, whatever, just fans or companies that have, like, you know, started up that specifically gear towards this niche. And what they do is they take broken down, typically it's broken down MVS arcade cabinets, they gut them, take out the motherboards, and basically make a shell around it. Or they acquire the single cartridge motherboards, and again, make an enclosure around it, and sell it to you. And what's great about this is you get the best of all worlds, right? You get the MVS games, which are the cheapest games out there, in the sense of the 100% arcade games. Literally, you are buying the arcade game. It has the largest library of titles, and all of the CMVS units, not all, but a lot of the CMVS units I've seen, come with that UniBIOS chip already installed. They already have all the modern day video out features, typically. Not all the time, but very typically they do. So what's the con, right? It's like pro all over the place. They even make it so that you can use the original Neo Geo AES joysticks, which you can find on eBay for around 70 to 80 bucks, depending on the quality of the stick. So where's the bad? Well, I've got it written right here. It's expensive. Okay, it's really expensive. A Consolized MVS, I mean, they typically are around $500 for really good ones. You can get some basic ones, which are basically the motherboard is open and they just have like a little slot where you put in the cart, and that's it. You know, they may not even have the BIOS on there. They might not have all the other bells and whistles. But there are other ones besides just those generic ones. There's a company that makes one called the Omega, CMVS, which it's nice. It's a Consolized MVS that has been modeled after the original AES. So it's got like the same shell and everything like that. It uses the exact same controller ports as those featured on the Neo Geo CD and the AES. Then there's the Deluxe Omega model, which is made by Analog Interactive, and what these guys do is same idea. They take the original SNK motherboards and they make an enclosure, but their enclosure is made out of real wood, and it looks gorgeous, but it's the absolute top of the line, this thing. They now make them with internal memory cards, which allow you to use all the memory card features, like for saving high scores, and I'm not sure about progress. I don't really remember that too much from the arcade, but I never really had access to a memory card, really, so don't really know. What else do they do? They have the BIOS inside. They've got all the modern day audio video outs. They've got a universal power adapter, like I was mentioning before. It's gorgeous. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous, and I'll be talking more about that in the future. Now, there's another platform that I've talked about quite a bit, and Steven's talked about quite a bit. He also is on the site. You've got to have seen his videos by now. It's called the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Now, this I wasn't going to mention this because it doesn't play SNK AES or MVS games, whereas all the other platforms, that's what we've been looking at. But if you're curious about SNK games and you're kind of nervous and you're like, whoa, they're a lot of money, every option I've mentioned is hundreds of dollars, right? Well, this is one option that's not hundreds of dollars. The Neo Geo Pocket Color can be purchased for like 70 bucks with games. It's actually the cheapest way to get into SNK games there is. And I highly recommend you actually do that. I really recommend you go out, pick one of these up, and see if you enjoy the style of games that were on this platform. And then if you do enjoy those really affordable games and you're like, wow, these are really cute, they're fun, they're, you know, unique, well then you might want to look into investing a little more money on its big brother, because all the big brother games are significantly more advanced than what was featured on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, and they're a blast. I mean, these games are amazing. They were designed for you and a friend to get together and just have a great time together, just having fun, either beating each other up or playing together in Metal Slug. It's just, you're never going to play on a platform that will bring you together with your friends and family like you will on the Neo Geo. It's the ultimate arcade experience, and it's awesome. There are other methods besides everything I've mentioned, and they come in the form of software. There's the Neo Geo Station, which is available on the PlayStation Network. And what this guy basically does is it allows you to purchase games for like $2, $3, $4, $5. I don't even remember the prices, but you can purchase the games that you want. A lot of them have online features now, which is really cool. Their net code kind of sucks, but it's an affordable way of checking out these vintage classic games. There's also a lot of compilation discs. Over the years, SNK wasn't stupid. They're not just going to release 50 copies of a game on the AES and, like, you know, have their titles in the arcades, especially when there was the falling out of the arcades in like the late 90s. So they released a lot of their games on consoles, other consoles like the Sega Saturn, the PlayStation, the Dreamcast, the PlayStation 2, the Xbox. I mean, you know, there's no shortage of ways of getting involved in SNK. So if you are really curious about getting involved in any of this, my first suggestion to you is go pick up a copy of King of Fighters 13. Go pick up a Neo Geo Pocket Color. Experience these titles for yourself. See if they're your cup of tea, as they say. And if you really start to get involved and you really start enjoying yourself with these titles, then I recommend you move on up to the Neo Geo MVS or the AES via any of the means I've mentioned here. Really, honestly, there's no substitute to having that original arcade stick in your hands and just going to town with these arcade perfect titles. They're amazing. They really are. A lot of them have held up tremendously well all the way to today, and I think you'll agree that you'll never play another system that's quite like this. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it was long and there was a lot of information. If you do have any questions, by all means leave a comment below and I'll gladly answer them.